famous since the 1980s for his murderous ways and mountains of cash and drugs, immortalized in dozens of rap songs, and the movie Paid in Full.
Paid in Full was anything but paid in full when it hit theaters. Not only did it flop at the box office, it disappeared from theaters so quickly that most people thought it was just another forgotten crime film. More than 2 decades later, it's one of hip-hop's most celebrated cult classics, with crazy behind-the-scenes drama and secrets that most fans have never heard. So how did one of cinema's biggest flops become a cultural phenomenon? And what really happened behind the scenes? Join us as we uncover 28 weird numbers about Paid in Full that you were never knew. Number 28. The film was built around one man's guilt. The reason Paid in Full exists at all is not because a Hollywood producer read about Ozzie Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez and thought there was a movie there. It exists because Ozzie Faison himself needed it to exist. After Rich Porter was unalived on January 3, 1990, Ozzie effectively retired from drug dealing. He had been shot 9 times in a stash house robbery in 1987, survived, and watched his partner get killed by their mutual friend. He came out of that period with one mission: to show young people what the drug life actually produced, which was not the Scarface ending, but the Mitch ending. But turning that story into something Miramax would finance required one person in the music industry to see what nobody else had seen yet. So who was the engine behind the whole thing? And what did he demand that changed the film forever? Number 27. Damon Dash was the engine that made it happen. Damon Dash, who co-founded Rockefeller Records with Jay-Z and Kareem Burke, executive produced Paid in Full. His involvement was not passive. He was the person who pushed the film into existence within the New York music and entertainment ecosystem of the early 2000s, leveraging the cultural capital of Rockefeller to attract Miramax's attention and keep the project alive through development. Damon also appeared on screen in a small role, placing himself literally inside the story he was helping to tell. The soundtrack was released through Rockefeller Records and Def Jam Recordings on October 25, 2002, threading the movie into the larger ecosystem of hip-hop commerce that Dash had spent a decade building. Paid in Full was financed and promoted by people who had grown up on the same streets the film depicted and who understood the story from the inside out. And Damon's fingerprints were on every layer of it, including one creative decision that turned an 18-second scene into one of the most studied moments in crime cinema history. So what did he personally demand that nobody else had thought to ask for? Number 26. Damon Dash made them extend the money counting scene. The money counting scene was originally scripted at approximately 18 seconds. Damon watched the cut and told the editors it needed to be longer.
We've made money, and we're very young, and if I feel like it, I can start something brand new and build equity in that with a good formula and sell that as well.
The scene was extended significantly at his insistence, and the finished version uses silence, the sound of rubber bands snapping and cash stacking, and Cameron's cold stillness in the background to build tension that the original 18-second version could not have achieved. Jay-Z visited the set during filming and reportedly suggested killing the music track entirely and letting the ambient sounds carry the moment. Let's now reveal how exactly Cameron got the role and what he was doing when the director first noticed him. Number 25. Cameron had 0 acting experience and got the role at a picnic. Director Charles Stone III was at a Rockefeller Records picnic when he watched Cameron freestyle. He had been looking for someone to play Rico, the character based on Alpo Martinez, and he had not found what he was looking for through conventional casting channels. Watching Cameron freestyle, Charles recognized the cold-blooded energy he needed and offered him the role on the spot. Cameron had never acted professionally before. What he had was an authentic relationship to the material and a natural ability to project danger without theatrical effort. But while Cameron was turning up to set with 0 preparation and somehow stealing every scene he was in, the man playing Mitch was doing the exact opposite. So what did Mekhi Phifer do to prepare for this role that most actors would never even consider? Number 24. Mekhi Phifer gained 25 pounds for the role. Mekhi Phifer, who played Mitch, the character based on Rich Porter, took a physical preparation approach to the role that went beyond what the production required. He gained 25 pounds and spent hours studying real surveillance footage from Harlem street corners, trying to absorb the bodily rhythms and behavioral patterns of men operating in that specific environment. The preparation was driven by the weight of playing a real person who had died violently, whose murder had generated grief across an entire community, and whose memory was still present in Harlem in 2001 when the film was shot. Rich Porter's real sister visited the set at one point, saw the apartment set that the production design team had built to recreate the spaces Porter had actually occupied, and had to leave because the accuracy of the recreation was too much to be around. However, the production was not only emotionally intense, there was a moment on set involving the prop money that turned genuinely criminal. Number 23. The prop money was so realistic, a Teamster driver tried to steal it. The prop department on paid-in, full-produced cash replicas detailed enough to create a problem the producers had not anticipated. A Teamster driver who worked transportation logistics on the film attempted to steal 2 bags of prop money during production, apparently convinced that what he was looking at was real currency.
Especially when it involved money, and they knew Mitch was first in line to get put on when he got out.
The incident required intervention, and the prop money was thereafter stored and tracked more carefully. And speaking of people being surprised by how close the film got to reality, the most unsettling production detail involves the man the film was actually based on. Because when Paid in Full came out in October 2002, one of its real-life inspirations was watching from somewhere most people did not know he was. So where exactly was the real Alpo Martinez when the film hit cinemas? Number 22. The real Alpo Martinez was still alive when the film came out. When Paid in Full was released in October 2002, Alpo Martinez was watching from behind bars. He had cooperated with federal prosecutors after his 1991 arrest in Washington, D.C., pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and multiple drug charges in exchange for a reduced sentence and a new identity. He was charged with 14 counts of murder, including the murder of Rich Porter, while a film portraying his life was screening in American cinemas. But here is something about the film's casting that most people have never noticed. Did you know that the same actors who played rivals in Paid in Full ended up playing almost identical rivals in The Wire? So what is that connection exactly? Number 21. Wood Harris and Avon Barksdale are the same person. Wood Harris was the quiet, methodical kingpin, Ace, in Paid in Full. The following year, he played the quiet, methodical kingpin, Avon Barksdale, in The Wire. Jamie Hector was Ace's rival Dunn in Paid in Full, and then Avon's rival Marlo Stanfield in The Wire. Hassan Johnson plays Ace's accomplice in the murder of Dunn in Paid in Full, and then plays Avon's chief enforcer, Weebay Bryce, in The Wire. 3 actors playing nearly identical structural roles in 2 entirely separate crime narratives. The casting team of The Wire went back to the same well because what these actors did in Paid in Full was undeniably the real thing. And the real thing always started with the real people, which means to understand how Paid in Full became what it is, you have to understand how Ozzie Faison became who he was. And the answer to that begins with a cinema screening in 1983. Number 20. How Ozzie Faison became a drug dealer. The real-world detail that the film captures in its early minutes, the one about Ace being inspired by watching Scarface at the cinema, is not a screenwriter's invention. After attending a screening of the 1983 film Scarface, Ace was influenced to enter the drug trade. He had been working various jobs, including at a dry cleaning business, when a cocaine supplier he met at a pool hall presented him with an opportunity. By the time he turned 21, AZ had become the cocaine wholesaler in Harlem, reportedly earning $40,000 a week or more, equivalent to approximately $120,000 in 2025. Interestingly, the film's most devastating sequence, the one involving Mitch's kidnapped younger brother, is also real. And the truth of what happened to Rich Porter's brother is so much darker than what the film showed that most people who have seen both versions cannot quite believe the real one. So what actually happened? Number 19. Double tragedy. The brother subplot in the film, in which Mitch's younger brother is kidnapped and held for ransom, is the most devastating sequence in the movie.
Yo, hey, Sonny's gone, man. What? Yo, somebody took him, man. Somebody took him. Nah, this shit is real, B.
The real version of this event is almost impossible to comprehend. On December 5, 1989, Rich Porter's 12-year-old brother William was kidnapped on his way to school in Harlem. The kidnappers cut William's finger off in order to extort $500,000 in ransom from Rich.
He sent me his finger in an envelope, man. All bloody and shit.
Later lowering the demand to $350,000. William was eventually unalived. His body was found on January 28, 1990, a mile away from where Rich's body was found. Rich Porter had been unalived on January 3, 1990, less than a month before his brother's body was recovered. Now, if you assumed all of this was filmed in the actual Harlem streets it depicts, you are about to be genuinely surprised. So where was this film actually shot? Number 18. The film was shot in Toronto. The production of Paid in Full took place primarily in Toronto, Canada, not in New York City. The production design team, working with cinematographer Paul Sarasi and production designer Maher Ahmad, reconstructed the visual to fit the 1980s Harlem in Canadian locations. The details were meticulous: the clothing, the cars, the street signage, the interior spaces. All of it was researched and recreated in Toronto to serve a story rooted in a specific time and place 600 miles away. And after all of that painstaking work, after all of the money spent on period accuracy and authentic performances, the finished film did something almost embarrassing at the box office. So what happened when Paid in Full actually opened in cinemas, and how bad did it actually get? Number 17. The film bombed in cinemas and nobody could explain why. Paid in Full opened at number 8 at the US box office during its opening weekend. It made $3.1 million against a production budget of $7 million and was widely considered a commercial failure. The reviews were mixed. Critics praised the performances, particularly Cameron's, but described the narrative as predictable and the story arc as too familiar within the crime drama genre. The film disappeared from cinemas within 3 weeks. Home video, cable, and eventually streaming did the rest. But long before the film existed, hip-hop had already been telling this story in its own way. So how early were rappers referencing these three men, and who was name-dropping them before cameras ever rolled in Toronto? Number 16. Jay-Z referenced Rich Porter before the film existed. The cultural material of AZ Faizon, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez had been circulating in hip-hop long before Paid in Full was made. Jay-Z's 1998 song, A Week Ago, referenced Martinez's status as an informant. 50 Cent had referenced the trio across multiple songs. Nas had referenced them. The three men were already mythological figures in the New York hip-hop ecosystem that was being produced by people who had grown up in the same city at the same time. Paid in Full did not introduce these figures to hip-hop culture, but one thing it did do was give a number of future stars one of their earliest screen appearances, including one man who would go on to win 2 Emmy Awards. So who was in this film before anyone knew his name? Number 15. Ron Cephas Jones had a role before anyone knew who he was. Ron Cephas Jones appears in Paid in Full in the role of Ice, one of the street-level figures in the film's Harlem landscape. In 2002, he was a working actor without significant mainstream recognition. In 2017, he became one of the most beloved figures in American television when he joined the cast of NBC's This Is Us as William Hill, the biological father of Randall Pearson, earning 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series.
The Emmy goes to Ron Cephas Jones from This Is Us.
And he was not the only future star hiding in this film's cast, because another actor in a relatively small role here would go on to play one of the most frightening villains in television history. Do you know who it was? Number 14. Jamie Hector was also in the film. Jamie Hector, who played Marlo Stanfield in The Wire beginning in 2006, appeared in Paid in Full as Dunn, Ace's rival. His role in the film requires him to project exactly the kind of cold, territorial threat that he would later develop into one of the most frightening villain performances in the history of prestige television drama. And beyond the future television stars hiding in the cast, Paid in Full was also pulling in genuine legends from the actual era it was depicting. So which foundational figures from New York hip-hop's golden age showed up on this set? Number 13. Doug E. Fresh and Busy Bee. Doug E. Fresh and Busy Bee, two figures from the foundational era of New York hip-hop, both appear in Paid in Full. Their presence in a film set in 1980s Harlem is not simply cameo decoration. Both men were genuinely active in the New York hip-hop scene during the exact period the film depicts, and their faces in the background of certain scenes provide a period authenticity that no look-alike casting could have produced. The film's relationship to hip-hop history runs through its soundtrack, its production, its financing, and its casting. And the financial power behind that soundtrack came from a label at the absolute peak of its commercial dominance. So what was happening at Rockefeller Records in October 2002, and why did their involvement change everything about how the film reached its audience? Number 12. Launched through Rockefeller at its most powerful. The Paid in Full soundtrack was released on October 25, 2002, through Rockefeller Records and Def Jam Recordings. This was Rockefeller at approximately its commercial and cultural peak. Jay-Z's The Blueprint had dropped in 2001. The Blueprint 2 was released in November 2002. The label was the central axis of commercial hip-hop at that moment, and attaching its distribution power to the Paid in Full soundtrack meant the music reached an audience that the film's modest box office never could have generated on its own. The music supervisor credit went to the world-famous Brucey B, and the film kept threading the real New York rap world through its background in ways that most audiences watching today do not fully register. Because N.O.R.E. and Jim Jones were both in this movie too, and one of them had a very distinct connection to the man playing Rico. Did you catch it? Number 11. N.O.R.E. and Jim Jones. Both appeared in the film. N.O.R.E. and Jim Jones both appear in Paid in Full. Their presence threads the film into the actual social fabric of the New York rap world of the early 2000s, rather than simply using it as a vehicle for celebrity cameos. Jim Jones in particular would go on to be associated with the Diplomats, the rap collective that also featured Cameron, creating a real-world connection between the actor playing Rico and one of his actual colleagues appearing in the background of his scenes. One thing is obvious about Paid in Full. You are watching real people play versions of real people, surrounded by other real people who know all of them. And among the real people in the background of this film is a woman who would eventually become one of the most acclaimed actresses of her generation. So who was Regina Hall playing in this movie, and where did her career go from here? Number 10. The film was Regina Hall's early career. Regina Hall, who appears as Keisha in Paid in Full, was in the early stage of the career that would eventually include Girls Trip, Support the Girls, and an Independent Spirit Award for Best Female Lead. And while her career was just beginning when the film was made, the real-life story the film was based on had already produced one of the most disturbing pieces of footage you will ever see from a person who knew he had done terrible things. Because before Alpo Martinez died, he sat down and recorded something that his own son said was never supposed to come out. So what was in that video, and why did its leak change everything? Number 9. The real Alpo recorded a video retracing how he unalived Rich Porter. In 2019, 2 years before his death, Alpo Martinez sat down with street documentarian Troy Reed and recorded a video in which he retraced the night he unalived Rich Porter in 1990. According to Alpo's son, Paparazzi Poe, Troy Reed either betrayed his trust or allowed the footage to fall into the wrong hands. The video circulated before Alpo's death and generated enormous outrage.
Huh? How did the police know? The police? Right. I told them. You told them too? Yeah.
Particularly in Harlem, where Rich Porter's memory remained significant more than 30 years later. Many people who had been willing to let him exist quietly in Harlem withdrew that tolerance when they saw the tape. He was shot on Halloween night 2021. Now here is a comparison that puts the whole commercial story of this film into a very strange perspective. Because by 2002, Cameron was making so much money from music that the film's entire box office gross was basically what he was bringing in from a good week of album sales. So just how badly did the numbers add up? Number 8. The film made less money than Cameron made in a week. By 2002, Cameron was one of the most commercially successful artists on Rockefeller Records, with his Come Home With Me album generating significant sales and radio play. The film's commercial failure of the film had no impact on Cam'ron's career, partly because the film's subsequent cult life gave his performance in it a legacy that the opening weekend box office could never have predicted. And while the public was busy not watching it in cinemas, the man who helped create it was privately furious about what he felt the film had gotten wrong. So what did AZ Faison actually say when he watched the finished version of his own life story? Number 7. Glorifying the drug life. In an interview with New York Magazine following the film's release, AZ stated that he was not happy with how the movie came out because it was supposed to be a film that did not glorify the drug game. What it delivered instead was a film that is genuinely stylish, that makes the money and the lifestyle look undeniably appealing. The story of what that means is sitting right there at number 1. But before we get there, one of the most important recent developments in this story just happened, because a very powerful name in entertainment has decided this story needs to be told on a much bigger screen. So who is bringing Paid in Full back, and in what format? Number 6. A TV series based on the film. In 2025, it was announced that 50 Cent was developing an extended television series based on Paid in Full, with Cam'ron attached as an executive producer. The announcement confirmed what the film's sustained cultural presence had suggested for years, that the material has not been exhausted by the 2002 film, and that the appetite for a longer, more detailed treatment of the AZ Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez story remains significant. Whatever this series becomes, it starts with one of the most specific pieces of music in hip-hop history as its foundation. So why did that song become the title and the soul of this entire project? Number 5. The song that was already a statement. Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full, released in 1987, was already one of the most significant rap records of its era by the time AZ Faison chose it as the title of his film 15 years later. The song is about exactly what the film is about: the desire for financial freedom and respect in a world that has not been offered either through conventional means. But while the title did a thing, the counting scene became something that the film industry genuinely did not expect. So what happened when that scene started showing up in film school curricula? Number 4. The scene has been studied in film schools. The money counting scene has entered the curriculum of film schools because of the way it uses silence, sound design, and spatial positioning to generate tension without conventional thriller techniques. When the music disappears from a film that has been using music consistently, the audience's nervous system registers the change before the conscious mind does. Something has shifted. Something is wrong. The film knows this and deploys it with precision. But how did a film that bombed in 3 weeks end up being completely right about its own importance? Number 3. The prediction of irrelevance and immortality. Every element of Paid in Full's release trajectory, the limited marketing, the mixed reviews, the quick box office decline, suggested a film that would be forgotten. Every element of what the film actually was guaranteed that it would not be forgotten. The cult film requires a film that is good enough to reward repeated viewing, specific enough to belong to a community that will keep it circulating, and initially overlooked enough that discovery feels like finding something meant for you, rather than something advertised to you. Paid in Full hit all 3 conditions simultaneously and then waited for the internet to do the rest. But the real-life story it was based on did not stop producing dramatic chapters just because the film finished rolling. Because Alpo Martinez lived a final chapter that was almost more cinematic than the one Cam'ron performed. Number 2. Alpo's final years were as dramatic as the film he inspired. After his release from prison and his return to Harlem, Alpo Martinez lived the contradiction of a man who had become mythological through betrayal. He was referenced in rap songs as both a cautionary tale and a figure of street legend. He had snitched on people who had trusted him. He had harmed his best friend. He was shot 5 times on Halloween night 2021 near West 147th Street in Harlem, the same neighborhood where he had built and destroyed everything he had. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable truth about the whole thing, and the one that sits at the very top of this countdown. So what is the thing nobody wants to admit about what Paid in Full actually became? Number 1. The film's irony. Ozzy Faison wanted to make a film that showed the truth of the drug life rather than fantasy. What he got was a film that became the fantasy. Every new generation that discovers Paid in Full discovers it as a style document instead of a cautionary tale. AZ is still alive and still trying to communicate the truth that the film he helped create sometimes obscures rather than reveals. Which of these 28 numbers hit different for you? Drop your answer in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.